Hello everyone and welcome to Funky Monkey MP, the place where you get your weekly dose of miniature painting, history and world building. Before we continue our journey through the history of roads, let's talk about the miniature. This is Indy, the ragdoll bard from Animal Adventures Tales of Cats and Catacombs. As a disclaimer, not going for a zenithal priming was a conscious choice, as I wanted to make sure that the colors were vivid, and as you well know, it is quite difficult to cover black paint with vivid pigments. Now, let's continue through our story. Before we do so, let's take a look at the miniature. As you can see here, I'm applying a darker shade to the miniature's face, trying to create a bit of contrast and draw more attention to it. Last time we were in Asia, and we will stay here for a little while longer. Ancient China. 2250 years ago, around 220 BCE, the first Chinese dynasty, from which the name China derives, the Qin dynasty, began the development of a major network of roads. These roads were very wide, they were stone surfaced, and they were lined with trees to offer shade for travelers. Whenever the road intersected a mountainous region, very wide but very low stone steps were carved into the surface for easier traversal, of course. Depending on sections and sectors, the highway was between 20 or 60 meters or between 60 and 197 feet wide. It was around 750 kilometers or 466 miles long, and it connected the capital of the empire to the border. I'll not attempt to pronounce the name of this highway as it is almost impossible to me, but it is roughly translated as Qin's direct path or Qin's highway. And surprisingly, it was constructed in only 2 years. Now I don't know where you guys are from, but where I come from, a road of 750 kilometers is never done in 2 years, even with modern day technology. So yeah, it's quite impressive. The road was constructed using clay bricks held together by mortar. Hope you admire my lovely assistant. I will not tell you her full name as she has many titles, but for now let me introduce Potato, or Crispy Sweet Potato Dust. Don't ask, you're gonna get the rest of the titles as we move on. Now, as for the scope of this road, many clues indicate that it was a military road, and that's why it was so very well maintained. Ancient sources tell us that a message sent from the border could reach the capital within 3 days and 3 nights of constant travel. The same sources also tell us that the army could reach the border within a week, which I'm gonna take with a generous pinch of salt, as it would mean that soldiers had to march more than 100 kilometers per day and then still be able to engage in battle once reaching the border, which is not that plausible, let's say. As I've mentioned before, the road was paved with burnt bricks and held together with mortar, but that is not true for the entirety of this road. Most sections were actually made of very tightly packed dirt that was leveled using very heavy rammers. First, the earth would be removed, it would be crushed, baked, and then packed together using the said heavy rammers, and this ensured that vegetation could not grow and break the surface of this road. As you might imagine, when it comes to traversing mountainous regions, the road was constructed in a zigzag pattern, so no surprises there. But at this point, the first stones were laid in place for what would later become the Silk Road. And yes, pun intended. Initially, this road was used to transfer jade from the western part of the empire to the eastern part, and then it was linked with the road that we mentioned before in Assyria and Babylon, and will become the Silk Road. As a bonus bit of information, the first Chinese dynasty, the Qin dynasty, was also responsible for creating the Terracotta Army. I'm sure you've heard of that. An additional great achievement of this dynasty was the creation of the first segments that were later included in the Great Wall of China. With that, let's take another look at the miniature before we move on. As you can see, the miniature is coming along quite nicely, and right here I'm adding highlights and details to the different straps of leather. Let's continue our journey. As I told you in the first video, we will now be going back to the Middle East, ancient Persia. Closer to our time, after the Assyrians were conquered by the Babylonians and the Babylonians were conquered by the Persians upgraded the existing road network and improved it. They did so by creating a very large network of caravanserais, or royal outposts. These were places where travelers and caravans could rest, replenish resources, and even sell their merchandise. The caravanserais also represented places where messengers could exchange horses for fresh ones and continue their journey. From what ancient sources tell us, a mounted courier dispatched from Susa could reach Sardis in 9 days. The distance between the two cities is of 2,700 kilometers or 1,650 miles, more or less. The same journey would take 90 days on foot. Our old friend, the ancient historian Herodotus, tells us a few things about the mounted couriers of the Persian Empire. He says, and I quote, "There is nothing in the world that travels faster than these Persian couriers." He also leaves us with a quote that was erroneously attributed to the US Postal Service. The quote talks about the Persian mounted messengers, and it goes like this. "Neither snow nor rain nor heat nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds." Now, before we move on, let us take one more look at the miniature. As you can see, the miniature is coming along quite nicely at this point, and I'm just adding golden elements to the different parts of the equipment. Let us continue. Now we've reached Europe. Let's talk about ancient Greece. The Greeks are known from things ranging from democracy to the Acropolis, but they are not known for their roads. Of course, do not imagine that they didn't have roads, but the roads weren't all that impressive. This is because of the rough terrain that characterizes Greece, predominantly mountainous regions, and because of the political division that characterizes the Greek peninsula in ancient times. This meant that no city-state had enough resources, wealth, or manpower to create and maintain a vast network of highways. There are not many impressive roads that characterize ancient Greece, but we do have two examples that might stir some interest and inspire you a little bit. First, it's an inland road that connects two major settlements, but it was also used to supply Sparta, of which I'm sure you've heard. But what's interesting about this road is that when it traversed mountainous regions, something akin to speed bumps was used to make sure that wheeled vehicles did not roll down the slope. This was achieved by paving the most treacherous areas of the road and using raised pavement stones that acted as obstacles for or brakes for the vehicles. This is quite interesting if you think about it. Another improvement brought to these roads were wheel ruts. Wheel ruts are deep grooves cut into the road to ensure that the wheels of vehicles did not skid sideways. This, in combination with the upper mentioned speed bumps, created quite a good surface for vehicles traversing mountainous areas. A second interesting road is one that comes from the southern part of Greece, from the Corinthian Isthmus. Due to its position, Corinth touched the shores of two seas, the Ionian Sea and the Aegean Sea. Now, what makes this place special is that because of very strong currents and high winds that characterize the southern tip of Greece, many travelers and merchants landed on one side of Corinth, the Corinthian Isthmus, and re-embarked on the other. This meant that merchants who wanted to traverse the whole area from one side to the other for a hefty fee would have to unload their ships, move them by mules or oxen carts, and reload on the other side on new ships. But the Corinthians had an idea, and they set it in place, and it became famous. Sorry for butchering the name of this road, but I'm not from Greece. The name of the road was Diolkos, which meant the drag across. This road was 10 kilometers long and it was pretty wide as to ensure the easy traversal of ships. Yes, ships. The Corinthians, for a very hefty fee, would drag the ships of merchants or travelers or military ships from one side of the isthmus to the other, from the Ionian Sea to the Aegean or vice versa. Only in more recent times was the isthmus cut and a channel was created for easier access. But in ancient times, this was the preferred way of traversing from one sea into the other, avoiding the treacherous currents and the high winds of southern Greece. Let's take a look at the miniature. The miniature is coming along quite nicely and I'm adding the final details and highlights to the leather elements of the equipment, as you can see right here. And with that, let us step away from reality and into fantasy. In my world, dwarves are master builders even when it comes to roads. Usually they would dig deep trenches and redirect molten lava in them, allowing it to solidify. Once solidified, it is paved with either slabs of granite or slabs of precious metal or encrusted with semi-precious or precious stones. But even among the dwarves in my world, there is one legendary road. It is called the Road of Stories or the Road of Forefathers. It is hundreds of kilometers long through the heart of a mountain, and it is made of pure silver. In its surface, the history of the clan and kingdom is carefully engraved. Each year, dwarves from across the realm come together to witness the continuation of the story. Lore masters of any ancestry and from across the realm wish to at least once visit this road and learn its secrets. It is said that no living creature, not even dragons, know the whole story engraved in the surface of this road. As you go further into the depths of the mountain, you go further back into history, and you can witness stories from before the calamity, before the collapse of the old world. You can witness the emergence of dragons, you can witness the silencing of the gods, and you can relive the War of the Living. And with that, let's take another look at the miniature. And with everything else done, I am starting to work on the miniature's base. And with that, thank you so much for joining me. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment below, and I will see you all next time. Have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful day. Cheers.